Hello everyone, this is SoundDrought, and rules are important. You'll find them in every big Discord server out there because otherwise they'd turn into the purge. So what are rules and how do you make them? Making rules seems pretty easy at first, but there are some things that you may not know. For instance, how do you fairly punish someone that broke the rules? Do you ban them, or do you just let them off with a warning? Even if you're not planning to make a server, if you use Discord at all, it would be good to learn about how the rules that you have to follow actually work. So let's talk about the server rules. First of all, what are they? Well, rules dictate what people can and can't do in a server. They don't want you to send more pictures of cats, they'll make a rule about it. Of course, most rules are more serious than that. For example, not being allowed to dox someone. They also serve a preventative measure, so they are able to prevent people from doing those actions in the first place, if they include them. This doesn't always work, of course, which is where punishing comes in. If someone breaks a rule, you have to decide how you're going to punish them. But we'll get back to that later. I think that's a pretty simple way of explaining how rules work. But what rules should you have? To decide on what rules you want your members to follow, you need to consider what kind of server you have. In my case, the first rule I came up with in my server is that swearing isn't allowed. This is because I have a family-friendly channel and I prefer to avoid swearing myself. No swearing is a controversial rule though. I mean, I understand swearing can be fun and it's a great way to express yourself. The main problem I have with swearing is that it often causes toxicity in servers. You know, people breaking out into fights, calling each other names. It's not very nice. While this is the case, it's possible to have a rule that compromises. For example, you could choose to allow swearing, but not allow it to be used against other people in a harmful way. When you make your rules, consider the pros and cons for each one. You want your server to be fun for everyone, but you also want a positive environment so that nobody feels hurt or left out. It's up to you as the server owner. You have to judge your audience and decide what rules you think are best for them. If that still leaves you stumped, don't worry. There are some baseline rules that I would recommend you add into any server that you make. These are mostly stripped from Discord's very own guidelines and are common sense, but you should include them anyways. You would be surprised how hard it is to make people read the rules in your server, let alone the rules in Discord's own terms of service. One example of this type of rule is not being allowed to send malicious files. It's already written in Discord's terms of service here, but I included it in my own rules to reiterate it, as it's important. Another extremely common rule that you can find in almost any server is about advertising. Unsolicited advertising is technically not against Discord's terms of service, but it's extremely annoying and I think it should not be allowed in most servers. This also includes DM advertisements, which seem to be the most common ones. Another very annoying thing I found people do is begging. Nobody wants to see Pro Minecrafter 999 begging for Nitro for the 100th time in chat. I'd highly recommend having a rule about this to prevent these guys from pestering your members. So, these were just a couple of the rules that you may want to include in your server. Now that you're all done making them, it's time to think about how you want to present them to your members. Personally, I wouldn't recommend going for the 10-page novel approach. In the era of shortened attention spans, you want to format your rules clearly and precisely so that members can ingest them as easily as possible. You've probably already seen it in this video, but you should add a number system to your rules. This will make it easy for members to keep track of which rules there are, and also how strict your server is based on how many there are. If your rules are especially long, I'd highly recommend that you make a shorthand version. It's quite self-explanatory, but you want to cut down on the verboseness of your writing and make it as simple as possible. Then you can link the long version for anyone that wants to read the fine print. It'll make sure people get the most important details without having to go through 4 years of college literature class. Here's another example that I did in my server. The Discord channel has a shorthand version with the most important rules, and then there's a link to my website that has the full version for anyone that wants to read it. Finally, we come to the most difficult and important aspect of the rules, punishing. You have to decide how you want to punish people for each individual rule that they can break. You have to gauge the impact of them breaking the rules and what you think they deserve for doing so. For instance, if someone doxes another user, that will inevitably threaten their lives. In that case, I would recommend instantly banning the user, which is the most severe thing you can do. But if someone only spams in chat, you probably don't need to punish them too harshly. That's where you can decide to warn them. A warning is just telling someone that they should stop what they're doing. Otherwise, you may have to escalate the situation further. I would recommend having some way to log the warnings. No, don't log them by writing them down in a spreadsheet. Get a bot. Bots come in very handy for punishing users. This is because you can warn, mute, and ban people alongside having logs, and the time and reason for every single punishment. Some bots I would recommend having are Adobe or Dyno. These will both allow you to perform pretty much anything you need for moderation. I'll include links to them in the description. All you gotta do to add them is go to their website and click the Add Bot button, then select your server and give it the permissions that it needs. Pretty easy, huh? So, back to warnings. When should you use a warning? Well, warnings are really handy to punish people for causing minor problems. Problems that you don't feel deserve a straight mute or a straight ban. Then, what you can do is log the warnings and choose to mute after a certain amount of warnings have accrued. This gives people a chance, or chances, to not break the rules after they did the first time. The whole point of giving warnings and using this system is that there's some leniency in it. That gives people a chance so they don't get muted instantly, which is kind of unfair in my opinion. There are also some special cases that can result in different types of punishments. For example, if you have an impersonation rule, then you can mute people that break the rule to prevent them from impersonating in chat. Then you can unmute them when they change their profile picture to something else and stop impersonating. Mon Dieu! Hopefully, that gives you an idea about how to punish people that break the rules. Gauge how severe the rule breaking is, then decide on a punishment that is fitting for it. Great job! You've finally created everything. All the rules, all the formatting, and all of the punishment details. Well, now it's time to delete it all. Well, that's an exaggeration, but it's not entirely wrong. You will need to eventually update the rules. This means changing both the rules themselves and the punishments that you give for them. You may need to add rules, delete rules, or change them based on how the community and moderation team responds. Listen to both of them, as they are the ones most affected by the rules and punishments that you have set in place. Thus, they'll have the most experience. Talk to your members and ask them what rules they feel are fair, even if it seems counterproductive. Just communicate with the people in your server and try to understand what they think about the rules. The rules are not meant to be feared or make your moderators power hungry. They are meant to make the server a better place. Also, something important for you to do as the owner is communicate any changes you do to both the server and your staff team. Make an announcement so everybody in the server knows exactly what's changed, as otherwise it'd be incredibly unfair for them to be punished for something they had no idea existed. So that's pretty much it. We went over what the rules are, how to create them, how to format them, how to punish people for them, and how to update them over time. Hopefully, this guide has helped you out and made you understand the rules better. If you're just a server member, instead of fearing them, maybe now you should embrace the rules so you can navigate your way around Discord better. If you're an owner, take my advice and make an amazing Discord server. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.